Have you ever looked at a tiny action figure and realized it costs enough to pay for an entire vacation? In the world of wrestling collectibles, there's an unspoken rule. The fewer people who've ever seen it, the more people want to own it. From black card pieces that show up like whispered legends, to prototypes that slipped away from the production line, to decal variants with just one small difference that sends the price through the roof, these are all treasures on a display shelf. Today, Wrestling Sphere is taking you through the rarest, weirdest, and most crave-worthy finds of all time. Let's get started right now. Wrestling Sphere, go. 15. Linda McMahon, Jakks Pacific. When people bring up the Attitude Era, they usually remember the on-air chaos, the killer one-liners, and the way WWE turned almost every character into legit merch. Back then, action figures dropped like clockwork. If you had even a little momentum on TV, odds were you'd get a plastic version for fans to display. But in that everybody gets a figure landscape, there's one gap that still feels unreal: Linda McMahon. Linda basically never had an official retail release you could just grab off a shelf. What gets collectors buzzing are a few ultra-rare prototypes believed to have existed during Jakks Pacific's WWE figure run. And these aren't bootleg pieces. Prototypes are typically early test models used to lock in the sculpt, facial proportions, hair, outfit details, and sometimes they aren't even fully painted yet. That's why anytime someone posts a photo or even casually mentions a Linda prototype, the community reacts like a missing puzzle piece from WWE merch history just resurfaced. The intrigue is simple. The prototype may exist, but the trail stops there. No wave. No product code. No clear release info. For collectors, this is the most frustrating kind of rare, because you know it was once real, but the evidence just cuts off. The most common rumor is that Linda didn't like, or didn't approve, her plastic likeness. Sounds small, but in licensing and public image, one yes or no can freeze an entire project permanently. And once Linda gradually stepped away from WWE to focus on politics, the odds of her ever getting a figure only got slimmer. So if you're the type who wants a complete McMahon set, Linda is the piece that keeps your display from ever feeling truly finished. Want to recreate classic McMahon family scenes? You'll need a stand-in figure, a custom, or you accept the hard truth. Sometimes the rarest item is the one that never officially hit stores. 14. Honky Tonk Man, Black Card. He's the greatest intercontinental champion of all time, at least. That's what he's always told the world. And with Honky Tonk Man, that confidence came bundled with a glittery jumpsuit, perfectly styled hair, and that unmistakable Elvis knockoff swagger. But what makes collectors bring up Honky today isn't just his TV prime, it's a figure variant rare enough to make people swallow hard: the Black Card. Honky's story is fun because he wasn't a one-release-and-gone situation. Like a few other LJN era names, he got issued twice. The more common version is the Series 5 blue card, still collectible, but it's something you can realistically hunt down if you're patient, ask around, and watch listings. The Black Card re-release, though, that one sits in the see it once, remember it forever category. It's not rare just because fans hype it up. The scarcity comes from how few actually circulate, and how often the surviving examples aren't fully intact. And that's where the pain starts: accessories. Honky came with a plastic guitar, a small detail that completely changes the value. In the collector world, missing an accessory is like missing a signature on a poster. It's still the item, but the magic drops fast. A lot of Black Card Honkies that made it through the years are missing the guitar, have torn cards, crushed bubbles, or show obvious played with, where like they've been through a war. That's why when a Black Card does pop up in true mint condition, clean packaging, complete accessories, everything sharp, it stops being a toy. It becomes a trophy. Prices can climb into wild territory, and there have been cases where collectors paid close to $1,100 just to land this exact, annoyingly rare version. Bottom line, owning a Honky is doable. Owning a Honky Black Card? That's like trying to catch a piece of the moon and stick it on your shelf. 13. Dusty Rhodes, Hasbro. For a lot of people watching this, their first memory of wrestling figures probably ties back to the iconic early 90s WWF Hasbro line. Chunky, tough bodies that felt like you could toss them on the floor and they'd survive, with bright colors that popped so hard you could spot them instantly on a rack. Back then, Hasbro was basically a money printing machine. If you could name a star who regularly appeared on TV, chances were a plastic version already existed, or was about to. And it wasn't only the poster headliners, either. Skinner, Marty Jannetty, even Ludwig Borga. Let's be real. If you had just enough profile to keep showing up, Hasbro was willing to put you on the shelf, too. Which makes the twist even weirder. One of the rarest Hasbros then, and still one of the most hunted now, is Dusty Rhodes. That's what's so strange about it. Dusty was a legit heavyweight icon. Even if the polka dot American Dream era wasn't the absolute peak of his career, it was still memorable, still recognizable, and successful enough to earn him a spot in Hasbro Series 2 in 1991. He even hit shelves earlier than names you'd assume would be there from day one, like the Legion of Doom, Bret Hart, or Sergeant Slaughter. So why is he so scarce? Sharing a series with Roddy Piper, Ted DiBiase, and Jim Duggan, maybe Hasbro looked at Dusty and thought, do kids really want to buy this lovable older guy? So they produced fewer. Or maybe distribution hiccups meant fewer units reached stores than planned. Or, funniest theory of all, Dusty bought them all and started his own secret figure federation. Whatever the real reason, the outcome is the same. When people talk about rare Hasbros, Dusty's name almost always lands in the group that makes collectors take a deep breath before asking the price. 12. Big Boss Man, Star Toys. Copyright can be both hilarious and annoying. Same character, same product, but the moment it crosses a border, everything can turn into a totally different version. You see that all the time in entertainment. Each country gets its own release plan, its own distribution, and sometimes the same name delivers two completely different experiences. Collectibles work the exact same way. With wrestling action figures and dolls, the whole one character, multiple fates thing happens constantly. In one region, the manufacturer changes. Somewhere else the backing card is different. Another market gets odd paint choices, faces that look slightly off, or even a totally different material. And that's how you end up with something collectors love, country-specific oddities, made mainly for a local market, barely known outside it, rarely preserved, and even rarer in clean, complete condition. A classic example is the WWF dolls made by Star Toys in Spain. Let's be honest, they're the kind of thing that makes you curious, and also makes you want to take a small step back. They're around 14 inches tall, so they dominate a shelf. The proportions are warped in a way that's hard to explain, yet somehow they still resemble the real person. Big, puffed-up hair. Faces that feel weirdly familiar. And most importantly, real cloth clothing. It doesn't feel like you're holding a figure, it feels like a wrestler cosplay doll. Just cosplay done with a little too much enthusiasm. You might love them or hate them, but one thing's undeniable. They have real collector value. They're strange, they're scarce, and they represent an era when WWF merchandise outside the US could mutate in ways nobody saw coming. Within that set, the one rumored to be the toughest to find is Big Boss Man. And to collectors, condition is everything. A boxed copy that's clean, complete with all clothes/accessories, and still holds its shape can get priced in the thousands. 11. LJN Miss Elizabeth Wrestling Superstars, Purple Skirt. Good news for fans of early wrestling toys. When WWF rolled out the first batch of LJN figures, the lineup was almost entirely male, until one woman showed up to break that monopoly. Miss Elizabeth. It sounds like a small detail, but for collectors, it's a huge milestone. Elizabeth wasn't just a background character. She was tied to that elegant, high-class aura, calm, poised, and instantly adding a layer of glamour the second she appeared. Even better, you don't just get one Elizabeth. LJN made it more interesting by giving her multiple skirt variants. There's a yellow skirt version, bright, eye-catching, easy to spot. And then there are stories about prototypes with oddly finished details, the kind of rare you hear about more than you actually see. But if you ask what truly makes collectors drool, the answer almost always lands on the legendary purple skirt. It isn't just a random color swap, it's the kind of variant people talk about for years, yet trying to find one feels like playing hide and seek with the market. Many Elizabeth figures didn't age well. Skirts fray, fade, warp, or go missing entirely. And with Elizabeth, that skirt is basically the soul of the piece. Bad skirt, bad value. That's why the crazy part is real. A mint example can, and has, sold around $1,800. Yep, nearly $2,000, over a skirt color. It sounds ridiculous, but that's the collector rulebook. Sometimes the most expensive thing isn't wildly different, it's just different enough to become a legend. 10. Jeff Hardy, Mattel. The newest name on this list is Jeff Hardy, tied to 2009, right when Mattel kicked off WWE's modern figure era. Jeff was slated for Mattel Elite Series 1, a line aimed straight at adult collectors. Sharper sculpt, better detailing, more display-worthy than toybox friendly. And because it was Series 1, Jeff became rare as hen's teeth. The wild part is, unlike pieces that only exist as prototypes, this Jeff figure was actually produced. Not a rumor. It made it past the prototype stage, went into manufacturing, and was packaged like it was ready for shelves. Sounds final, right? Not even close. At the last second, a recall happened that collectors still bring up. Mattel pulled the product back from sealed cases before it could properly hit retail. In plain terms, it was basically at the door, then yanked away like it never existed. The reason is painfully familiar. Jeff Hardy rejoined TNA. Wrestlers switching companies happens all the time, and normally you just sell through what's already made. But this was Elite Series 1, the debut wave, the face of the WWE Mattel partnership. There was no way they wanted a recently departed star featured in the most important launch lineup. So yes, the Jeff figure exists, but in extremely small numbers, hard to verify, which is exactly why bootlegs exploded. Plenty get listed for insane money, and buyers don't always know what they're holding. But if you do land an authentic one, it's not just a cool figure, it's a full story you can tell for an entire night. 9. LJN Macho Man Randy Savage, Wrestling Superstars 89 Black Card. Let's put it on the table with no dancing around it. If you're hunting LJN with that, see it, buy it on the spot mentality, this is the ultimate endgame. In the Wrestling Superstars world, there are plenty of pieces that are rare, plenty that are expensive, and plenty that are overhyped. But the 89 Black Card Macho Man is rare in a way that makes your pulse jump the moment someone even whispers, "I've got one." It's scarce because there were never many floating around to begin with. Clean examples are even harder, and anyone who owns one tends to lock it down like a trophy. The part that's both funny and painful is this. Even the small poster that comes with it can run around $180. Yeah, that poster. A thin piece of paper you'd assume was just there to complete the package, yet it's valuable enough to sell on its own. It sounds like a joke, because sure, you could find an image online and reprint it. But to collectors, reprint isn't an answer. They're paying for originality. The correct insert, the correct extras, the true, complete set, that time has separated almost everywhere. And if you're talking a mint Macho Man, blister still crisp, card still stiff, corners not crushed, colors still popping, then you're in a different league, around $4,500. Think about that. That's used car money. It's so lucrative that some longtime collectors keep $5,000 ready just in case the right one shows up at the right time, and they don't have to live with the regret of coming up a little short. What makes it even scarier? Even a beat-up one, wrinkled card, dented bubble, clearly passed through multiple hands, can still hover around $2,250. Bottom line, this isn't just a toy. It's treasure hunt material. You don't buy it only to display it, you buy it to say one sentence, "Yeah, I caught Macho Madness." 8. Hulk Hogan Rookie Figure, Poppy. To the average person on the street, Hulk Hogan is basically the face of pro wrestling itself. He's bigger than the business. One name that instantly paints the picture. The bandana, the muscles, and that aura that makes everything around him feel smaller. That's why Hogan ended up on everything. Shirts, souvenirs, cartoons, side projects you wouldn't even believe, and of course a mountain of action figures. Most collectors enter the hobby through the Hasbro mail-away, order-by-mail nostalgia at its finest. A clean, factory-sealed example with sharp labels can move for a few $100. But the mail-away is more like a test of how deep you're in. Anybody who's been collecting for a while has heard of it. If you want to touch true rarity, you have to look to Japan. Long before the iconic red and yellow era, before Hogan became the all-over-the-world superstar, he already had an action figure as early as 1981. At the time, Hogan was working in New Japan, in what people often call the Hogan Ichiban phase, and Poppy Toys released his Rookie Hogan. What makes it special is that Chapter 1 feeling. This isn't the fully commercial, larger-than-life Hogan. This is Hogan still building the foundation, before he shaped everything into the show we all recognize. And because it's that early, it's genuinely tough. Fewer people bought it to preserve, fewer kept it intact, and even fewer copies survived in strong condition after all these decades. So when you spot one that's still sharp, still looking like it hasn't been ground down by time, you're not just buying a figure. You're buying a slice of history. Only downside? The box didn't come with a mini Hiro Matsuda so you could recreate that legendary broken leg moment. Because if it did, collectors would probably lose even more sleep. 7. The British Bulldog, single release, blue cards. The powerhouse Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid were originally packaged the way a proper tag team should be. Sold together in a 2-pack, complete with the WWF Tag Team Championship belts. Sounds simple, but to collectors it's the perfect combo, the correct pair plus accessories that push the value up. And in reality, that tag team pack alone is rare enough that it has reached close to $300 at auction. But if you think that's the peak, welcome to the more irritating layer of the Hasbro universe. The separate retail single release. Yep, same characters, but issued as a Series 3 single, and importantly, without the tag belts. You'd think less stuff would mean cheaper, but collecting loves to flip logic on its head. The version that's split up and barely seen is the one that keeps people up at night. The problem is these are easy to misidentify at a glance. If you know the blue card look, you already get it. Once it's out of the packaging, a single Davey Boy doesn't look that different from a regular loose figure. That's exactly why people call them fake single cards in a sense, because the only real proof that it's truly the Series 3 single release is, it has to still be sealed. No seal, no card, no story. And without the story, the value drops fast. So the irony is brutal. The hardest part isn't finding the figure, it's finding the figure in a condition that can actually confirm the version. And when verification equals rarity, the price launches. One case that collectors still bring up, a Davey Boy Smith like this sold on eBay in 2015 for nearly $2,000. In short, if the tag team pack is what you want for the shelf because it looks right as a duo, the Series 3 single is hunted for a different reason. It's the kind of rare where just seeing it still sealed tells you you're staring at something most collectors have never encountered outside of photos. 6. LJN The Hart Foundation, Wrestling Superstars Tag Team Box. If you're the kind of collector who loves tag team box sets, meaning you don't just hunt loose figures, you crave that complete pair feeling, then there's one set that almost always sits at the top of the wish list, LJN's Hart Foundation. The Hitman and the Anvil in one box sounds perfect, and it's pure LJN in every way. Big, heavy, a little rough around the edges, yet weirdly irresistible. This isn't the kind of pickup you make just for fun. This is the kind of item you see once and immediately think, if I pass on it, will I ever see it again? What makes this tag team box so legendary comes down to two things, rarity and condition. Because LJN figures are made from solid rubber, a lot of survivors show scuffs, paint wear, and age, while the packaging often got crushed, torn, or bent from years of careless storage. So when a truly mint set appears, box still firm, print still sharp, the contents looking like they've barely been touched, it instantly turns into a hot commodity. At one point, the value hovered around $1,200, which is already a number that makes most people pause. But the collector market doesn't run on reasonable. It runs on timing and scarcity. And there have been moments when a mint pack closed at $2,025, one of those prices where you don't even get time to think. And the story doesn't stop there. For serious LJN fans, a clean box set isn't just about owning the duo. It leads to the next question. Do you also have the single releases from the exact same run? If you do, that matching single becomes the extra puzzle piece that makes your collection not only complete, but correct. And that alone can push the value up by roughly another $750. Bottom line, if you ever spot a Hart Foundation tag team box in great shape, don't treat it like an old toy. Treat it like a ticket into heavyweight collecting, where one box tag team can make people rewrite their spending plans just to say, yeah, I locked it in. 5. AWA MatMania Remco. Before WWE later reinvented the wheel with wrestling merchandise, they weren't the first American company to turn wrestlers into a full-on figure line. That first mover credit belongs to Vern Gagney's AWA, when they teamed with Remco in the early 80s. There's even a rumor the deal was originally offered to WWE first, but for whatever reason it ended up with AWA instead, a detour that gave collectors an entire stash of vintage gems to obsess over. In terms of quality, MatMania isn't the kind of line that wows you with modern-level detail. Honestly, they feel like He-Man figures who happen to wrestle, without the trip to Eternia. Big muscular bodies, old school articulation, and that unmistakable toys back when toys were built to take a beating vibe. But somehow, they've got charm. And here's what surprises people. A few of the face sculpts look more accurate than you'd expect. Sometimes they even hit harder than certain glossy modern figures that look slick but feel lifeless. The biggest advantage of being early is simple. For many wrestlers, this was the first time they were ever turned into figures. For collectors, the first always carries extra weight, like a first printing of a comic. Not perfect, but undeniably original. The line only ran 4 series, featuring AWA stars like Rick Martel, the Road Warriors, Kurt Hennig, and even Scott Hall with that mustache you can't forget. But the set that gets hunted the most is the final series. The reason is straightforward. It includes less common names, those sounds familiar, rarely seen pieces, like Ric Flair, plus Shawn Michaels from his Midnight Rockers days, a detail that instantly gives a display shelf more story. Of course, sealed in the package is the ultimate dream. But even loose figures from that series, if they're clean and still have their original accessories, can climb into the hundreds. With MatMania, the price isn't always about perfection. It's about being a footprint from the opening chapter. 4. Ultimate Warrior Collection, Jakks Pacific. Calling Ultimate Warrior a mystery is the understatement of the century. That's like calling an explosion a little loud. Warrior was hard to predict, and anything hard to pin down somehow becomes even more collectible. A big part of it is that he was insanely toyetic. Put Warrior into figure form and it automatically looks cool. Loud colors, bold shapes, instantly recognizable at a glance. Put a kid in front of a toy aisle and they're almost guaranteed to grab Warrior over someone like Steve Blackman. Just look at Warrior's entrance, sprinting out like a hurricane, face paint exploding with color, mullet flying, tassels whipping everywhere. That kind of look was basically designed to become a figure. If someone watches that and still says, "Nah, I don't need a Warrior figure," I respect it, but it's rare. Then came the Warrior's wilderness period, when he was away from WWE. Yet he still signed a deal with Jakks Pacific for a handful of figures in their WWE line. It sounds odd, but back then it wasn't unheard of. Even Bruno Sammartino had a Jakks figure at one point, despite famously not being friendly with Vince Jr. or how WWE operated. And the limited stuff is exactly where collectors lose their minds. Warrior's agreement included several super limited edition pieces. A WCW comeback figure limited to just 20, numbers that make your chest tighten. There's another that looks almost like a Greek statue, posed stiff and regal like it belongs on a pedestal. There's a Fury figure that doesn't pair up, turning completion into an even bigger headache. And the crown jewel is a figure based on his Royal Rumble 1991 look, something people believe exists in only 3 copies. In short, Warrior was already unpredictable, and these Jakks releases turned that unpredictability into something you can place on a shelf, assuming you can actually find them first. 3. Adrian Adonis, Black Card. Adorable Adrian Adonis already existed in Series 5 on a blue card, a version you can still realistically get your hands on if you hunt at the right time. But what makes collectors freeze is the 1989 re-release on a black card, a piece that already sounds off the moment you hear about it. Why does it feel off? First, Adrian had been released by the WWF back in 1987. A figure coming out after someone leaves a company can still make sense. Production delays happen, licensing can stay active, and product can hit shelves late. But the second detail is what turns it truly strange. Adrian passed away in 1988. So seeing a 1989 black card of him feels like a product pulled out of its own timeline, drifting into a corner of the market almost nobody gets to touch. That unusual backstory is exactly what makes this figure rare in the most frustrating way. So rare that most people only hear about it, instead of ever seeing one in person. It barely shows up for sale. What usually exists are a handful of scattered photos like proof, just enough to confirm it's real, and just enough to crank up the obsession. Anytime someone says, "I saw one," the story spreads fast, because everyone knows you might not get another chance for a long time. And once something reaches legend status, the price stops following normal logic. People say the Adrian Adonis black card can hit $5,000. And with vintage pieces, condition is everything. The cleaner it is, the more complete it looks, the fewer signs of time it carries, the easier that number climbs. Collectors aren't just buying plastic and cardboard, they're buying the story, the rarity, and the feeling of owning something most people only know through rumors. So if you're truly chasing this one, the advice is simple. Start saving now. Because when the opportunity finally flashes in front of you, you won't have time to hesitate. 2. Kamala Moonbelly, Hasbro. Up to now, I've been breaking down the Hasbro line from every angle. Everything from dusty Rhodes being rare to the point of frustration, to those limited mail-away pieces that sound like pure legend. But if I had to pick one figure that completely steamrolls the rest in terms of rarity, it lands on a name most people wouldn't expect. It's Kamala, the late Ugandan giant, with the oversized mask, bare feet, and that wild, instantly recognizable vibe. On TV, when Kamala showed up, you knew something strange and dangerous was about to happen. As a toy, he carried the same energy. But the key to this story isn't his size or the mask. It's one small detail that changes everything: the moon on his belly. For whatever reason, the majority of real-world Hasbro Kamala figures show up with a yellow star on the stomach instead. Like someone misread the design, slapped on the wrong decal, or the factory just had a low battery day and decided, a star is fine. You can flip through Kamala after Kamala and it's the same thing: star, star, star. And that's exactly why the correct version has a blunt, collector-made nickname, Moonbelly. A tiny number, seriously, a tiny number, left the factory with a proper moon decal. Nobody can say for sure why: printing error, early test run, first batch, or just random assembly line chaos. No one knows. What everyone does know is that it created a rarity monster. And because it's a decal, it's also prone to peeling, fading, or scratching. So finding a clean one is even harder. The number most often passed around is around 24 known to exist. And if you ever come across a Kamala Moonbelly mint on card, perfect bubble, sharp card, clean presentation, your wallet could get hit for $10,000. It sounds ridiculous, but that's the collector law. Sometimes one correct decal is all it takes to turn a figure into treasure, and turn the buyer into a full-time belly inspector on the spot. 1. Rhythm and Blues, Greg Valentine, Hasbro. Even though Kamala Moonbelly is the final boss of officially released WWF Hasbros, there's still a figure that outclasses it in a way that's even more annoying. And staying true to this list, it's not the name you'd guess first. It's Greg, the Hammer Valentine. Yes, Valentine. Former Intercontinental Champion, a guy whose face always looked like a freshly carved stone statue that's mad at the entire world. You look at him and assume, the toy can't be anything special. But wrestling collectibles love to troll, and Valentine accidentally became the center of one of the rarest Hasbro pieces collectors have ever whispered about. For about 15 glorious seconds in the late 80s, Valentine dyed his hair black, threw on a nerdy rocker outfit, and awkwardly played a guitar as part of Rhythm and Blues with Honky Tonk Man weird gimmick, sure, but it had toy potential. Black hair, distinct gear, instantly screams, oh yeah, that era. Here's the problem. The Rhythm and Blues Valentine figure was approved, had a prototype, and even showed up in promotional material. So it wasn't just an idea on paper. It got right up to the edge of mass production, and then got pulled before it hit the line. Why? That's where the rumors kick in. Some say it involved his wife. But the cleanest explanation is timing. By the time the figure was ready, Rhythm and Blues had cooled off and turned into a distant memory. So the company played it safe, produce Honky Tonk Man, and make Valentine as the classic blonde-haired version instead. Easier sell, easier recognition, less risk. The result? People believe only around 3 of these Valentine prototypes exist. And famous figure collector Matt Cardona is said to own one of them. Reportedly, he bought it as part of a larger lot with other rare items, with a total figure that gets mentioned at $43,000. Your bank account has to be built different for that, especially for a guy who, ironically enough, once got buried by Kane on TV. If you're into this kind of treasure hunt vibe, hit that like button to give us a boost. And don't forget to subscribe to Wrestling Sphere and turn on notifications, because there are plenty more rare finds still waiting to hit the screen.